Session of day 6 of World Unity Week. And today, all day, we've been reflecting on this foundation of life that is climate. And it's a really great honor for me personally to have our next panel. We're very excited about what's going to be shared here today. We have Neale Donald Walsch, Steve Farrell, and Timothy Noe here with us from Humanities Team. So firstly, gentlemen, welcome to World Unity Week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, it's very lovely to be here. Thank you for having us.
Neale, it is really great to be with you. Part of my story was reading Conversations with God books back in the turn of the millennium, a long time ago, and they had a profound impact on me at the time. So this is extra special for me. Let me just give a brief introduction to everybody who may not be aware of Neale Donald Walsch. Is a modern day spiritual messenger whose words continue to touch the world in profound ways. With an early interest in religion and a deeply felt connection to spirituality, Neale spent the majority of his life thriving professionally, yet searching for spiritual meaning before experiencing his now famous conversation with God. The Conversations with God series of books that emerged from those encounters have been translated into 37 languages, touching millions and inspiring important change in their day-to-day lives. Neale's written over 30 books on spirituality and its practical application in everyday life. Steve Farrell is a co-founder and worldwide executive director of Humanities Team, a non-profit organization based in Boulder, Colorado. The organization is focused on helping people through the world awaken to their deeper self and the interconnectedness of everything in the universe. Humanities Team presently has approximately 700,000 friends in over 150 countries. Some of their projects include industry-leading transformational education programs, Global Oneness Day, a day that Humanities Team created following its visit to the United Nations in May 2010. And we're going to be hearing a lot more about the amazing work of Humanities Team today, which is exciting. Timothy Noe is developer of digital strategy and non-profit resources. Timothy Noe is a student teacher of scripture, particularly how to use it to help us think about ourselves and our world in a way that makes sense, uses reason, and is beneficial for all. Timothy lives in Oregon with his family of 6 cats and is a developer of digital strategy and non-profit resources at Humanities Team. Again, welcome to each and every one of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And we've got a little, if you like the idea, Ben, we can just kind of step through a program. Neale and Timothy and I have thought we could kind of start with something, and then we can go into conversation and Q&A and whatever you like.
That sounds great. That sounds great.
Kind of get us started here. So, first, let me again say just thank you for inviting us. Great to be here. Of course, we feel a huge kinship with Unity Earth, your summit here, 99 Days of Peace through Unity. And we're delighted that today's focus is spiritual climate of the planet because, these are things we want to talk about. So you kind of got to this in your introduction here, Ben, but Humanities Team was founded in 2003 in Wilsonville, Oregon. And then in 1996, Neale founded the Conversations with God Foundation. So we're 19 years old, Humanities Team, and the Conversations with God Foundation is a little older than that. Now, we are actually in the midst of launching our biggest initiative ever, Humanities Team, the Conversations with God Foundation, Neale Donald Walsch. And isn't it a surprise that it perfectly aligns with what these themes are here? So we're going to fly at a very high level, but tell you about the initiative because it's really for people that are conscious all over the planet. So we see you, all of you here, and others that aren't here as being on this level playing field that's going to make this whole thing work. So now, before I tell you about the initiative, let me start out by sharing part of how this thing got going about 8 months ago. And we were having conversations in Humanities Team with just internally and also with Neale. And the conversations were about these, I call them front porch and back porch and living room conversations that it seems everybody is having all over the planet. where, and I'm sure all of you or most of you have been in at least one conversation like this, where you've got family or friends or coworkers or some combination of these, and everybody's kind of sitting there saying, my God, can you believe what's happening in the world today? And now we have the Ukraine, and then we still have COVID, and there's climate change, and there are fires, there are tornadoes, and there's polarity in politics, and the list just goes on and on and on. And nothing wrong with a conversation that opens up that way. The problem is the conversation is just circular like that, where it's just this oh my God, is there any light ever at the end of the tunnel here? And I'm guessing for you all too, that would drive you crazy to be in a conversation like that. My conversation like this was actually in February, and it was with my four brothers. I have four brothers, so there are five brothers sitting together. We're at a retreat in Mexico. We were on our back porch, and this went on. One of my brothers has worked inside of humanities team, so he said, of course there's light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, this is what Steve does. And so we did bring in, of course, this whole conscious living thing. But honestly, I don't want to lead you to believe that after I had talked a little bit, that all five were like, fantastic. There is light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to make it happen. There's a way through, etc. We did not end the conversation that way. I think most of my brothers felt like neat that there's somebody doing something. Maybe there's a little something that comes out of this, but I don't think there was this sense that there was really something substantial that was going to happen. So now this drives us crazy, and maybe you too, because of course the solution or the remedy or the path or the map or whatever we want to call it is right under our nose, right? It's right under our nose. So we could call it creating peace through unity. We could call it creating a favorable spiritual climate on the planet. We could call it awakening oneness. We could call it elevating our consciousness into this unity consciousness. We could call it so many things. And the new spirituality, doesn't matter what we call it. They're actually all, in the way we see it, all pretty much the same thing. So what we're calling it is conscious living. We're calling it conscious living. And the reason is conscious living reaches the maximum number of people and really starts to put a finger on what we're talking about. And it brings in a lot of things, unity, consciousness, and oneness. But it brings in more than that, because conscious living is bringing in this whole interior thing that's a part of our life, not just an exterior world, an interior world where we go within and where we commune with nature and the divine and life and many other things. When we talk about conscious living, we're talking about just elevating consciousness to where we really get it. We get the invitation in life. We get that our soul's calling, following the impulse of our soul in every moment is what it's about. So this is the thing that was driving us nuts, that, of course, conscious living with the things that I'm talking about, this is not something new. These things have been around a long time. There's a lot of progress that's been made. There are many people that are conscious all over the world. And yet, in what we believe, when we talk about the world at large, or with mainstream, we don't see this conscious living as something that's been elevated, that's huge, that people all over the world are talking about as the light at the end of the tunnel, as the remedy, the roadmap, the way out. We don't see that as something that's a part of the conversation. And then up in philanthropy, even in what they call moonshot philanthropy, which is definitely this is not in the conversation either. Of, are you considering donating to causes like conscious living that, most of us can't afford to go to Mars, even if this whole Elon Musk thing works. So would you want to work toward creating conscious living on the planet so that we have this habitable, sustainable, flourishing planet? So no, it's not on either level. So you can see then where I'm going with this. Where I'm going with it is, my God, and largely, I'll say, the Conversations with God books, just as Ben was sharing, that was the thing that opened me up, changed my life, left Silicon Valley, moved to Boulder. It was like, that dream, that's my dream. That's my dream. I'll help bring that into the world. So, and of course, there are many people all over the world, I think, that feel that way, where it's seeped into our life. And these things that I'm talking about, oneness and unity consciousness and interior life and things, are a part of many of our lives. And yet, a global undertaking to, in this generation, to make conscious living pervasive worldwide in this generation while we're alive. That we don't see it. It's not out there. So that's what this initiative is about. That's what our initiative is about. And I'm going to, I'll read you a couple of quotes from Conversations with God. I've actually, as many times as Neale and I have been together and done programs, I've actually never done this before. But I want to do this. I want to read a few quotes. And then I want to say a few things that I know Neale, as the author of the Conversation with God books, would never say himself, but that I believe. Okay, so here's a couple of quotes from Conversations with God. The first one is from it's a 9 series of books. Neale's has 30-something books, but there are 9 Conversations with God books. The last one, the most recent one, was called Conversations with God, Book 4, Awaken the Species. Okay, and here's a quote from that book. This, what I'm talking about, conscious living, is the most important matter facing the human race if you truly want to take advantage of being the perfect time for advancement, and it's capitalized, perfect time for advancement within your species, allowing it to continue to exist in a wonderful and pleasant version of physicality. This is the most important matter facing the human race. And then these other 2 quotes are from Tomorrow's God, where Humanity's Team is part of that conversation. In this book, it was more in the middle of this series, or a little later than the middle of the 9-book series. So here's 2 more quotes. I can assure you, all of you will awaken. That's in caps. All of you will awaken. This is part of the process of evolution, the process of rejoining the inseparable, knowing again that separation never occurred. Each of you will awaken because no part of God can be deserted by God. Okay, and then a short final quote that I'll read. There are hundreds that I could pull out, but okay, this also from Tomorrow's God. The Day of Atonement, that is @-1-ment, is near at hand. So I'm going to bring in this other thing I shared. Neale, don't think would ever share this himself, but it's my truth, so I'll share it. Which is that all of us, I know this audience, every one of you, and certainly true for me, we have conversations with God all the time, right? That's part of this whole unity consciousness thing, and this conscious journey it's not some abstract thing. It's part of why we're here, probably. We get it. It's part of our life. It's not an uncommon thing at all. So then the notion, with all of the change that's going on this planet, the chaos, the challenge, that God would say, this is probably a good time for a big public conversation. And he picks Neale Donald Walsch to have this conversation. where all of this wisdom is laid out. And then you have, and God even going on record as saying, all of you will awaken. The time of 1 minute is at hand. All these things. This is the perfect time for advancement. We're one decision away from living consciously. As said, these things are, if you're familiar with the 9-book series, these things are said over and over. And if I were God, and of course I'm not, just a little wave on the ocean like all of you, but I would do the same thing with all of what's going on in the world. My God, is this the time to create some clarity for people and lay out a little wisdom, some stepping stones of, hey, you can just, this is how life works. And here are some, you can take these steps if you wish. As you know, if you've read the series, there's not any musts, you have to, it's the furthest thing from that. It's, if you'd like to have a fulfilling life and you'd like to create a sustainable and flourishing planet, these are things you might do. It's that soft. So as you can imagine, then this initiative we're launching, I started out with this whole initiative thing. Humanities Team, Conversations with God Foundation, Neale Donald Walsch. Candidly, we consider all of you part of this, though you'll make your own decision. But that together on a level playing field, that we're all going to drive in this direction toward, in this generation, making conscious living the thing as a central organizing principle. It's already seeped into humanity here, there, and everywhere. We can walk around the world and these concepts are now understood. But where we say, where we're in that front porch or back porch conversation or in the living room, and the conversation opens up with, oh my God, can you believe it? There's absolutely no way out. That 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that it quickly moves into, yeah, there are challenges here. There's to say there's no way out. Are you kidding? We're already halfway there. So that's what our initiative is about. And just we invite you all to some of you may be on Neale's email list or Humanities Team email list or parts of our programs. Of many of you actually here are faculty that have created online programs that are excellent, that are on our streaming platform. So thank you to you all that are faculty that are part of that. So again, we see this as a big partnership. We're absolutely 100% aligned with the work you all are doing. We were delighted and privileged to be invited here. And if you get excited at all about this, let's come in and do it together. There's nobody leading this parade. We're all going to do it together. That's how this, of course, has to work. Okay, and with that, I want to Neale Donald Walsch is going to come in and share, and then Timothy Noe right after Neale.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Ben. I'm so glad to be here with you, all of you today. The initiative that Steve has been talking about is called Changing Humanity's Future. That's the title of the initiative, Changing Humanity's Future. I appreciate the invitation for me to share some thoughts on how we can do something on this planet that we've been trying to do as a civilization for thousands of years. Not many people are aware of the following statistic. Let me share something with you. There has been armed conflict on this planet for 92% of recorded history. Now along comes an organization like Unity Earth and a wonderful person like Ben Boulder, capturing in 3 words an idea that could finally alter our reality. The 3 words, peace through unity. It's not a new idea. It's not a never before heard of thought, but it's a new initiative, putting powerful and inspiring new energy behind long-standing wisdom. An initiative that is supported by all of us here at Humanities Team, because the initiative falls right in line, just as Steve is sharing, with the mission of Humanities Team itself, and it falls in line as well with what I consider to be the single most significant message of the Conversations with God dialogue, on which the mission is based. So in these few moments that I'm blessed to be able to share with you, I'd like to offer you a bit of information about that message. In my first conversation with God, I was told something that has remained at the forefront of my mind for the past 27 years. I never forgot when I heard these words. We are all one. There is only one thing, and all things are part of the one thing there is. When I heard that, I knew immediately that it was a solution to so many of the human-made problems on earth. We are all one means that we are one with each other, one with all of life, and of course, one with the divine. There's no other way to interpret it as I see it. The implications of this for the human race are staggering. If we believed that this was true, that we are all one, everything in our lives would change. Everything. Everything in our religions, in our politics, in our economics, in our education, in our social construction, and everything in our personal lives as well. In our religions, we would see the end of their seemingly endless competitions for human souls. Religions would stop insisting on portraying themselves as the one and only path to God. They would insist on assisting us on our own personal path. And they would not claim to be the path, but to be a help to us on our path. They would cease using fear as the chief tool in their arsenal. They would stop teaching that unless we follow their particular doctrines, we're going to spend eternity in the everlasting fires of hell. Religions would instead be a source of comfort and guidance, of ever-present help and strength in times of need, and thus religions would serve its highest purpose and its grandest function. If we embrace the vision of Ben, unity for all, peace through unity in our politics, we would see the end of hidden agendas and of power plays and of the demonization of those with differing points of view. Political parties would stop claiming that their way is the only way, and that they would refuse to work together. They would stop refusing to work together to find solutions to the most pressing problems. And they would move society forward by finding common ground. They would seek to blend the most workable of their ideas with the most workable ideas of other political parties, those who differ with them. Thus, politics would serve its highest purpose and its grandest function. In our economics, if we embrace this notion, this three-word notion that Ben has put before us, we would see the end of bigger, better, more as the international yardstick of success. We'd create a new bottom line in which maximum productivity was redefined, and in which our endless drive for profits was replaced with an endless effort to demonstrate a reverence for all of life and a dedication to creating a world in which profit is redefined as each person being able to live in dignity with basic needs being met. Thus, economics would serve its highest purpose and its grandest function. In our educational systems, if we embrace this idea that Ben has placed before us, peace through unity, we would see the end of subject-driven curricula where emphasis is placed on memorization of facts rather than on the fundamental concepts of life that we hope our children will deeply come to understand: awareness, honesty, and responsibility. We would see schools which did not pour knowledge into children, but which draw knowledge out of them. and draw wisdom out of them, because deep wisdom is contained within all of us, and children know more than we think that they do if we reach in and invite their wisdom out. Thus, education would serve its highest purpose and its grandest function. But now, let's look at what "we are all one" as a message does not mean. Because I get some pushback when I share that idea that we are all one. But it doesn't mean that what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. The concept of oneness does not eliminate the possibility or the experience of, personal possessions or individual expression. It does mean, however, that we may find ourselves experiencing a higher level of desire than ever before to share our personal possessions with others, when we realize that there really are no others, but merely additional versions of the self. And sharing will become the highest expression of the self. But let's look at an even larger question. Why bother with all of this? I mean, why get involved in any of this? The answer? Because the climate of our time begs for it. Not just the environmental climate, but the philosophical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual climate is begging for it. Let's be honest. Nothing is working. I mean, nothing. Not a single system we put into place on this planet to make life better for all of us is functioning correctly. Not our political, not our economic, not our environmental, not our educational, not our social, and saddest of all, not even our spiritual systems. Not one of them is producing the outcome that we say we want, which is a better life for the largest number of human beings on the planet, not the smallest number. It's doing that. It's producing benefit for the smallest number of us. But we intended that these systems would produce benefit for the largest number of us. But wait, it's even worse than that. Not only are these systems not creating the outcome for which they were designed, they're actually producing exactly the opposite. They daily generate outcomes we say we don't want. And not just on a global scale. It gets down to the personal level. It gets right down to you and me. All but the smallest percentage of the world's people are caught up in struggle, daily struggle. Struggle not merely to just be happy, but for way too many people. Struggle to survive, to get by, to just stay afloat. And now it's gone past even that. Because now, even many of those who are getting by, who are staying afloat, who are living what we call the good life, are not having a good time. Not even them. Personal happiness seems mysteriously and frustratingly elusive. Even when people achieve it, they don't seem to be able to hold on to it. Now that's the biggest clue. That's the largest hint. That's the surest sign that something's amiss. When even those who should be happy by any reasonable measure are not, there's got to be a serious systemic problem in society's culture. You can tell that a social formula is askew when the formula is working, it's not. When even if everything's going right, much seems terribly wrong. That's the climate that we're experiencing today in far too many places and with far too many people. Which is why folks like Ben Bowler think it's time for a new message to be placed before humanity. And as I said, those of us at Humanities Team could not agree more. All of us think that this is the right moment for a brand new cultural story to be embraced by our species. Now, look, if you like the way your life is the way it is right now, and if you like your exterior world precisely as it is being currently presented, you might disagree with me. But if you see, as we do, that the next step in our evolution as a species is for some major changes to be made in the world at large and perhaps even in our own life, then I'm glad to have this chance to join with you today and to focus on the message of unity, a message that can change everything for the better if we simply embrace the idea that we are all one. We would not live on a planet where every man for himself is considered preferable to all for one and one for all. Remember that wonderful story written in 1844 by the French writer Alexandre Dumas? It was called The Three Musketeers. Remember that? And its guiding principle, all for one and one for all. Well, folks, we're getting closer and closer to 200 years since that story was written, and we still do not live on that kind of a planet. And so the question is, are we willing, as a collective, I mean, are we willing to continue living in an every man for himself world? Are we willing to just go on as we have been, bequeathing to our children and to their children a world that cannot unlock the mysteries of the human heart, that can unlock the mysteries of the human genome, but cannot unlock for all the love within humanity? We say we're not willing to go on like this. We say, no, we want a better life. Neale, we all want to produce a better life for our offspring. But what are we willing to do about it? And are we willing to do the bravest thing of all? Are we willing to challenge our most sacred belief, the belief in separation? Give me about 2 more minutes to explain this to you, because I think it's important for us to really look at this closely. Currently, we believe, as a species, I mean, in what I call separation. It starts with a separation theology. That's a theology that insists that we are over here and God is over there. The doctrine tells us that God separated us from God as punishment for our sins, and that our job now is to get back to God, which is possible only if God will allow it. If God will, tell us what to do and we obey what God tells us, if we follow God's laws and submit to God's will. Now, that wouldn't be so bad. I mean, okay. That wouldn't be so bad as far as it goes. I mean, we would all agree that we should all have the right to believe whatever it is we want to believe. And I'm not arguing with those beliefs. But the problem is, it doesn't stop there. Because our separation theology produces a separation cosmology. That is a way of looking at all of life on this planet that includes separation as its basic principle, declaring that everything is separate from everything else. Independent, for sure, but separate nonetheless. Even that cosmology wouldn't be so bad if that's as far as it went. But the problem is that a separation cosmology inevitably produces a separation psychology, which is a way of individually holding life that says, I'm over here and you're over there, and never the twain shall meet. We are separate entities, serving our own separate interests and having little to do with each other, unless, of course, we find that we need something from the other, at a certain point in order for us to be happy or to survive. You know what? Even that wouldn't be so bad if that was as far as it went. But it's not. Because the separation psychology inevitably produces separation sociology. Entire societies that form groups, little groups. They call them nation states, or political parties, or religions, or societies. And these smaller groups believe that they're separate from each other, but not just that they're separate from each other, but that they're better than each other, which produces groups of beings often at odds with each other. You know, my group is better than your group. My religion is better than your religion. My political party is way better than your political party. My country is better than your country. This is how we think on this planet. But you know what? Even that wouldn't be so terribly, terribly bad if that was as far as it went, but it's not. Because a separation sociology inevitably produces, here it comes, a separation pathology. Pathological behaviors of self-destruction, producing suffering, conflict, violence, and death. Death by our own hands. You think I'm making this up? Look around. Look around. Read your history books. Only when our separation theology is replaced by a unity theology, a unity psychology, and a unity sociology will our pathology be healed. We must understand that all of life is one. This is your first step and it's mine. It's the jumping off point, as Ben clearly understands, and as humanity's team has been saying as well for a very long time. This idea that we are all one, this idea of unity is the beginning of the end of how things now are. It's the start of a new creation, of a new tomorrow. It's a new cultural story. And we must be careful to tell that story with clarity and precision. We must articulate its first principle often. The first principle? Oneness is not a characteristic of life. Life is a characteristic of oneness. So, I invite you to listen carefully to your heart as you hear these words that are being shared with you today. And to ask yourself, is there something that I might not fully understand or might not have fully understood until now about life, about myself, and about God, the understanding of which could change everything? Is it time for us not to work against each other, but to work with each other? There's good news to share. There is some good news today. As the world faces economic crises, political upheaval, civil unrest, societal breakdown, environmental degradation, spiritual confusion, conflict, and war, people everywhere are finding the courage to not dismiss ideas that may not be widely embraced or practiced by all. And that's what we're inviting you to do here today. We're inviting you to not dismiss this idea, this notion, this prospect for peace, peace through unity. And I personally thank you, Ben, for stepping up and stepping out, for saying what is, saying it so eloquently, and for putting before us yet one more opportunity to move into the future for which we have all yearned, of which we all dreamed, and of which we are all capable of creating, if we choose to join with each other in unity. Thanks for letting me share my thoughts with you.
Thank you, Neale. And I guess I'll just step in here. Steve introduced me before, and let me just say, what an honor it is to share this stage with you, Neale, and Steve, and Ben, and everyone else here. The thought of speaking, sharing some thoughts after Neale Donald Walsch 5 years ago would have been a funny thought to consider, and now it's here. Just an amazing thing. I too have some experience with the Conversations with God series. I made it a regular practice to drive across the continental United States, while each morning starting with listening to the conversations on audiobook. So it's surreal that to be here, and of course, Steve, thank you for looping me in here and allowing me to be a part of this, and Humanity's team in general. As we speak of oneness and unity, Humanity's team shows us as an organization how an organization can operate with these principles of oneness and unity, that it's not just some abstract concept, but it can be applied in an organization. It can be in the culture itself, and we can share this concept of oneness in financially, in raising revenue and operating an organization. So thank you, Steve, and of course, Ben, and everyone at Unity Earth. Thank you for putting this event together so that we can be here today in the first place. What I feel called to share with everybody here, just briefly, is a bit on perspective, and specifically what I'd like to invite you to consider, just to consider the possibility that if we're speaking on the climate, the nature of the climate, the spiritual climate, the global, the environmental climate, climate is generally a term applied to something that's much larger than ourselves. We talk about the global climate. This is, the weather on the planet that occurs over a large period of time. This is something that's much larger than ourselves. So what I'd invite us to consider is that all of the problems that we hold about the climate, let's say, about the world, all of the problems that we see out there are solved through our own perspective of them. In other words, unity itself and all of the peace that accompanies unity, rather than seeing it as a list of external circumstances that can be accomplished, we can see unity as a perspective to choose within ourselves. And it may seem like such a shift in our understanding of unity is subtle, and admittedly, it is subtle, but perhaps this subtle shift takes us from one side of the fulcrum to the other side of the fulcrum. So how do we actually do this? How does this play out? How do we change our perspective to see unity as something that we can choose within ourselves right here and now? Well, whatever problems you may hold that exist in the world, the climate change, the environmental damage, the degradation, just feel into what is involved with this. We can make this problem so large and so outside of ourselves. It can involve countless groups of people. In order to solve this, we need to elect a president. We need to pass this legislature. We need to change the mind of all these people. And there's nothing wrong with this if we're called into doing this. But if we allow our own peace to be contingent upon the accomplishment of those externals, we will forever be missing the point, and unity will always be a can that we're kicking down the street. Rather, let us start with unity. Let us make the ends of unity be right here through means of unity. So this problem that we see, and maybe we've been working with this problem for years, and we have a good understanding of what it would take to solve this problem. And of course, it's outside of ourselves, and it involves this number of people and so forth, just to consider the possibility that this is simply a problem with our perception of it. And so inevitably, if we consider this problem, that if only these people would do this thing, to consider that this is really a problem within myself can be very uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to even consider the possibility that this thing, no matter how long I've been working on it, that really this is a problem of myself. And I kept thinking that it was that one guy that was doing this to me, but maybe it's myself. This uncomfortableness, this discomfort may come, but take courage, because it lasts but a moment. And what follows is true comfort, comfort with a capital C, the comfort that solves the problem, not just kicks it down the road, the comfort that solves the problem, not just changes it into a different form, comfort that resolves all of the problems that you see, can be potentially, possibly up to you in choosing right now to see yourself as part of this problem. So my invitation to you is to look out on the world, to see the problems that you're called to focus upon, and to consider inside yourself how this may be something of your own perspective. And in so doing, you will be accepting and embracing unity. The power is within you right now. It always has been, and it always will be. Because this is the punchline. This is the truth of the matter. Unity is, period. We don't need to work to get unity to be here. We don't need to establish unity. We don't need to uncover it. Unity is. We can choose to believe in something else, and this is our choice, but the spoiler alert is that there is nothing else, and we can try for many years to believe that there's something else, but it's certainly not fruitful, and it's certainly not fun. So all we're called to do here right now, all I'm called to do is to share with you to consider that unity is, and our awareness of it makes it stronger when we share it with one another, verbally or not. Our perspective is profoundly powerful. And when we see ourselves as part of the thing that's out there, when we see ourselves as part of the person that is speaking with us, because the person may be there, but really it's our perception of the person. And this is what is one with us. So we are one with our perceptions. We are one with all that we see. We are one with all of what we think, because it started within ourselves. And so with this, I just would like to thank you again, and for being here with me, for considering a slight shift in mind, and for being who you are and sharing this lovely and beautiful world together. So I think maybe Ben is back on here, so I'm not sure if I'm passing the baton back to you or Steve here, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. Let's have Steve wrap it up. Let me just say right now, though, what an incredible discussion it's been. So deep gratitude, Steve, to you for and Tim for facilitating this, and Neale. We're really looking forward to having you on. And boy, you came through in a big way. I do want to mention that this Peace Through Unity that we are galvanizing around in these 99 days was really a message left to us by the final message from a beloved elder called Avon Madison, who left us this powerful code and this message. And so we're really just organizing around her vision and lifelong dedication to peace, the pathways to peace, and her work in establishing the International Day of Peace, which this year will be celebrating its 40th anniversary since it was first commemorated in 1982. So, and just before we get final closing from you, Steve, I want to really underline, I think I want to grab your presentation, Neale, and kind of like put it out there because it's so profound. And from my perspective, the way that you trace it back to the theological origins of our situation is something I think not enough of us really deeply understand. And I think, highlighting that and sharing that and reflecting on that and coming together in conversations around that with religious leaders and non-religious people and people in all different aspects of society is crucial, critical, underserved work. And so I'd like to invite you to come back at some point, Neale, and continue this conversation theologically about a unitive theology that can be a healing for all those different levels of that you laid out. The unitive narrative, has been said in the chat here, is an important work and will be featured here in the room tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jude Caravan and many others have worked on that. So, Steve Farrell, thank you, brother. It's been very rich. We are out of time, but we want to have a closing wrap up from you.
Yeah, no, thank you again. Wow, Neale, Timothy, Ben, thanks for inviting us, and viewers, thanks for your time. And yeah, I mean, the thing that I would close with is, boy, I know you're here because this is so close to your own heart, this, peace through unity. And let's do this, right? We are doing it. We're already in this Conversation with God book, the last one that I alluded to, Conversations with God book 4, Awaken the Species. It says the biggest part of the mountain, the toughest climb is behind you. So we're wow, let's do this 99 days of peace through unity. Let's together just make that happen, on the earth during this generation before we pass. Let's do that together.
Yes. Let's do it together. The conscious living work that you're doing in Humanity's team and changing humanity's future. We look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you for coming in and sharing. You've invigorated us all, and we go forward together, arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, towards the rest of the mountain top, Steve, that we've got to climb together. So, Neale Donald Walsch, it's been a great honor. Timothy Noe, it's been an honor, brother. And Steve Farrell, thank you for the partnership, and on we go.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, thanks for having us. Love and peace and blessings.